Hello, that's Claire from Come Back Brighter. I'm going to talk to you today about something that I didn't, well, it's like something about the beginning of no contact, or certainly finding out about narcissistic personality disorder, and something that happens progressively during your healing process. And that is that things start to make sense. Okay. Sorry, I've got my cat here, so she might pop in and say hello. Everything starts to make sense. So when I remember when I found out about narcissistic personality disorder, it came about because of a Google search, okay? And I was looking up something like, oh, I don't know, difficult parents or something like that. And that led me down the rabbit hole that is finding out about narcissistic abuse, okay? And everything finally made sense. The website that I found like described my dad to like perfection, and it was actually quite scary. It was really validating because I always knew there was something that was not right. So it was very validating because it was confirmation of what I suspected, that things weren't right, okay, with him and between us. It was a two-way thing. And it was a shock because it was like, this is a thing. This is like an acknowledged problem. This is something that people suffer from, and it was a shock. So it was like, but it was also like, it was like a relief too. Okay, so it made so much sense to me, and I'd actually gone, previous to that, I'd actually gone no contact for a period of months until my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer. So I'd already gone no contact, even though I didn't know about narcissistic personality disorder. And when I made that first discovery, it just all made sense. It was the words that I needed to hear, the kind of the label, if you like, that really helped me to understand that the problem wasn't me. And so that was great. But of course, then there's a really big healing process to go through as you're validating yourself, as you're working through the symptoms of narcissistic abuse. A lot of healing to go through. But the other thing as well is that I found is that as time's gone on, it wasn't so much at the beginning. I occasionally find myself thinking about things, circumstances, things I was told, and it makes sense finally in the context of narcissistic personality disorder, in a way that it never did before. I was really confused. I was really confused about his behavior. But now when I look back and I think about particularly like points in my life, things when there was drama or chaos, or when he really hurt me, or confused me, or made me angry, narcissistic personality disorder explains all of it. So I think what you kind of do is you kind of, right at the beginning, you're still wondering, you're still doubting yourself. And that in itself is a symptom of narcissistic abuse, is that you're doubting yourself. Because I'd read all the things about narcissistic personality disorder, and I checked them all off for my dad. But there was still a part of me that was doubting myself, thinking that I was to blame, that I should have done something differently, and that I was responsible for the situation. So, but that takes a long time to come to terms with it, because really what you're doing is you're validating yourself after a lifetime of being invalidated. Okay, so it's like the pieces of the jigsaw like start to come together, and as the great thing about the healing process is it's particularly difficult and challenging at the start, but as time goes on, you start to like be able to emotionally disconnect yourself from what you've been through, and you'll have little things that will just remind you of something, and then when you think about it again, you can look at it in a detached way. They haven't got the same emotions involved with it, and then you can go, well, hang on, that thing and that thing, oh, that makes sense now in the context of narcissistic personality disorder. Because in particular, I remember with my father, he I went through a stage when I was depressed. I was really depressed. I'd come back from university. I dropped out of university, and all my friends had gone off to different cities all over the country, and stayed there and continued and finished their degree. So I came back and I knew nobody, and it was like I was just dropped back in, but the whole world had changed. The whole, like I said, there were none of my friends here. Everything had moved on. It was just like that time had never existed, and everybody was off living their own life, and it was a really bad time. And so I went on to antidepressants because I needed to, because I said that I wanted to kill myself. I told my parents that. That's how desperate I was. And this was years before I knew about a narcissistic personality disorder, when I was probably in my early 20s. So I told them that, and I remember a few years later, I don't know how the conversation came about, but I said to my father, "Oh, do you remember when I was depressed and I was suicidal?" And he denied it. He couldn't remember it, was what he said. I don't know that he said that never happened, but he was just like very vague, and that never happened. Not more like, I can't remember that. And I'm like, I look back at this with two heads. I'm like, so now I know about narcissistic personality disorder. I know that he was probably gaslighting me. He was trying to convince me that had not actually happened. He was trying to rewrite reality. That had not actually happened. But I knew that it had. I knew for sure and certain that it had. There was no doubt in my mind that it had happened. So I remember at the time questioning, why does he not remember this? Because I think that if my child came to me and said that was how they felt, it would be seared in my memory forever. And it would probably have a massive, no, not probably, it would have a massive influence on the way that I spoke to them. I would be looking out for signs of it. I would be doing anything that I could to help, offering any kind of counseling or anything like that to help them out. And my father did none of those things. So that was when I was like, that's where the narcissistic personality disorder thing comes in, because that's the time when you realize that he was gaslighting me. He was rewriting reality. He was trying to make me doubt myself. And also he was showing how little he cared for me, because he had forgotten, or he told me that he'd forgotten. It was so insignificant to him. That's how it felt, that his daughter had said that to him, that he hadn't bothered to remember, like it was some tiny insignificant detail that didn't matter, some daily occurrence that, what do you want for tea kind of conversation. Oh, I don't remember I had beans 3 months ago. No, this was for me a huge point in my life, when I only had my parents, I could only rely on them, and he appeared to have forgotten about it. So this is what I'm saying. And the good thing is, now I can look back with like no hurt or anything about that. I understand that now. So at the time, whilst it confused me, I thought, what's he playing at here? I knew he was playing at something. That's interesting. Even though, like I say, I didn't know about narcissistic personality disorder, I knew he was playing at something. I knew that. And I was hurt. It was really painful for him to not remember that, because I kind of hinted at it and he didn't know what I was getting at. So I had to actually say it. I had to specify exactly what it was I was talking about, and he still disregarded it, pretended that he didn't know what I was talking about. Or maybe he didn't pretend, maybe he really didn't remember, because to him, it wasn't affecting him directly, so he wouldn't care. So that's what I mean, is you start to piece these things together and understand it more. And then what happens is, you can't, because you can, especially when a bit of time has passed, you can look at it and it's healing, because I now see how abnormal he was in his reaction, not only when I said it, but also then years later when we were discussing it, that it's not me. that it is because he has narcissistic personality disorder, which is the explanation to all of it. So what I invite you to do is, I think it's kind of, and I did this, so I can't say anything, but it's so easy to spend days, months, years even researching narcissistic personality disorder. Okay, it's so easy to want to find the answers and to be watching these videos and watching other people's videos and reading blogs and like devouring information about narcissistic personality disorder. But when you're doing that, you're still focused on them. You're still focused on them. And whilst you're focused on them, you're not concentrating on what the effects on you have been. And that's the most important thing. The most important thing is not to actually like diagnose them, because you don't need to read very many articles. I read one, like the first one I read, everything that I read on that list, like grandiose sense of self, no compassion, no, very selfish, self-absorbed, all these things, the things listed off, tick, tick, tick for my dad. I didn't need to read anymore, but I did, because I was desperate for validation. I was desperate for an article to tell me exactly. But I knew straight away. As soon as I read, everything slotted into place. I understood things in a much deeper level than I had done previously. So what I invite you to do is, if you're still in that process of doing all this research, is to just stop, okay? Don't be looking up narcissistic personality disorder. Look at what the effects of are on, look up narcissistic abuse and what the symptoms of narcissistic abuse are. And then what you're doing is you're looking up how it's affected you. Okay, so, and that's really important, because I wasted months, maybe even as much as a year, devouring everything I could, reading all the books, all the stuff. And I wasn't concentrating on healing from it. I was distracted. I was searching for that document that told me that my dad had narcissistic personality disorder. And I wouldn't ever find that. And he would never get diagnosed, because he'd never be in a position where he could be. He'd never go and get help. And as soon as like a therapist or whatever might have mentioned anything like that, or some sort of test, he would have disappeared very, very quickly. So I want you to focus on yourself. I want you to focus on how it has affected you. How it has affected you. Because that's very important. And the sooner that your first reaction to the document, the first document that you read, that's enough. That's enough. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. That's what it is. Right, let's look up the symptoms of narcissistic abuse and how I can heal from them. So if you need any help, if you need help in healing from your narcissistic abuse, you don't know where to start, then please contact me. Either drop a comment here or email me, Clare, CLARE, comebackbrighter@gmail.com. Bye.